Hey, hello everyone. It's Dr. Joseph Capps coming back to you again for another episode of Dancing with the Darkness. Couple quick housekeeping items. If you are a brand new listener, this is a raw, unfiltered account of CPTSD, PTSD, operator syndrome, anxiety, depression. We talk about these things in a very raw and real way. Um, Part of it is based on my own experiences in living with CPTSD, uh, but also it is a lot of clinical and spiritual things that we bring into the picture for your wholeness and well-being. So do us a favor if this video speaks to you today. Like, subscribe to the channel. It's really the only way that we get reach out there in the community, and this is simply a resource for those individuals in this demographic that tend to not really go get help, or they've either gone and got help and they've been failed miserably by the mental health process. So this is just meant to be a resource for individuals like myself that are living with this every single day. And we appreciate your support so much. The ones that have subscribed and continue to come back and listen, we are so grateful for your support. We can't do this without you. So today what we're going to do, we actually kind of ran out of time last video. You know, when we're trying to address the mother wound, it's really so complex. We really can't rush through it, and we needed to take some more time with that. So today's video, we're going to kind of summate that a little bit more. We're going to go a little bit more in depth as to what it is and why it happens. And in particular, why we see this as being a huge component with individuals with developmental trauma and the comorbidity with CPTSD. It's really quite common, and it's one of those things that we have to face in our own healing journey, and we have to deal with, and we have to address in order for us to be better, be healthier, and to show up the way that we need to in our relationships and in life in a healthy way. This is always going to be a message of hope. It's never going to be us picking a scab and leaving your infection to sit there and fester. I can't stand that. That's happened to me many times. So we're going to go over some informative stuff that's probably going to resonate with you, but then we're going to talk about the hope for the future. And our final video next week is going to be dedicated 100% to a whole wellness way of being able to recover from the mother wound, the things that we have to do every single day, and the things that will make us better and healthier and help us to show up in a very strong way. So I'm not going to browbeat the audience with what we already covered in the past video. We kind of did a very basic synopsis of the mother wound and what that is. I'm going to go over a little bit, but I'm going to kind of elaborate, and then we're going to finish with some basic steps as far as how we start entering into the recovery process for this. So, you know, once again, we need to kind of go over how does the mother wound happen. There's really no one specific reason why that this happens. It is a variety of factors. This is what we need to understand, and all of these can contribute to it. However, I'm going to give you some pretty solid scenarios. Definitely, I know are true because many of these I dealt with as a child growing up. These are some very, very specific things that will most definitely cause a mother wound. And I want you to understand that it can be a combination of these things too. It doesn't have to be a single one of these factors. Some of us, like myself, there's multiple factors that led to the mother wound, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. You know, the first thing that we see with the mother wound, and me in particular, I have a feeling based on what my brothers have told me and such that from the earliest age, literally out of the womb, this was happening with my mother for various reasons. I spent a lot of time in a playpen, and the joke was that I was raised by a blind Chihuahua and a very fat neutered Siamese cat that we had. Apparently, the Chihuahua's name was Old Man, and he was blind, and the cat's name was Irving, and they would stay in my playpen with me, and they were fiercely protective of me. And, from an early age, I realized, if you're not a person of faith, I understand that, but with me, I always come from a place of faith, and I realized that early on, God had put things in place to protect me, even though it wasn't human beings and it was animals. But my father would tell me that when he would come over there to try to visit for his visitation, that Old Man would try to tear him apart, when he went to get me out of the playpen, and that Irving the cat wanted to be very close to me. That for some reason Irving the cat was always watching, like, I'll scratch your eyes out if you mess with this baby. I don't know. But that's an interesting little tidbit, I think. So the moral to that quick story is that what we see is when a mother meets your physical needs, okay, so, she's changing my diaper, she's probably giving me a bottle, she's meeting my basic physical needs in order for me to stay alive, okay? But when there is no protection, no nurturing, no affection, no comfort or warmth or emotional safety, this is how that mother wound starts to develop. We need to realize that this is the very first relationship that we have, and it is the most critical one in forming our psyche, and forming the way that we look at things, the way that we develop our emotional intelligence, our attachments. I mean, it covers the whole gamut. The only thing that we are inborn with is temperament. And we have talked about that in past videos. There is an epigenetic factor from the genes that have been passed on, and the trauma that has been passed on, but there's also temperament, which is our unique footprint or fingerprint, our soul, so to speak, that God puts in us, and that is about 52% of us. And so these things can't be changed, but 48% of us is a result, literally, starting right now with this mother wound. And these are things that we need to face. And if we can have the ability and the control to work on that 48% of ourselves, we can show up in the world in a much healthier, amazing way. And then we start to see our experiences as very beneficial, experiential, because we can use these things and validate ourselves and feel tremendous worth by using these things to help other people. That's probably the only selfish motivation that I have in doing this channel and doing these videos, is that I am able to come forth out of fear, out of intimidation, whatever. And you know what? I get to show up in front of the world in a very real, authentic way, and be a little bit vulnerable and not worry about what whoever's listening to this thinks, right? My experiences happen for a reason. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And some people might think I'm defective or I'm a reject or whatever, and that's their opinion. But there are others of you that are out there that are just like me, that once upon a time I was desperate to be understood. I was desperate to be heard, and desperate for someone to just understand what I was going through just a little bit. And so that's why I'm doing this, because maybe somebody's listening today and something that I say resonates with you deeply because it's something that you went through. And now we have a kinship and we have a bond, and you know that you have a brother that's out here in this world that intimately understands what you've been through and will never judge you and never look upon you in a negative way, but will only love you and pray for you because they know exactly what you're going through. Okay, so let's look at some other things. Another thing that mothers will do sometimes is that they will resist any negative emotion that we have. Okay, so we're trying to learn how to express ourselves. We're trying to learn how to what does anger look like? What does sadness look like? What do these things look like? And so anything like anger or anything negative in the view of our mother either is going to get ridiculed or completely and totally ignored, which completely dysregulates us And the boundaries that we desperately are seeking, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, we're not getting those. And so there's a very tremendous amount of confusion, and it makes it very, very hard for us to develop psychologically, mentally, and physically, and spiritually, really, in a healthy way, because there's this complete and total confusion on how we are supposed to integrate into the world, and how we're supposed to show up, and how we're supposed to act. There's also, if your mother had a very critical mindset towards you, and we're going to talk about that in the future with the father wound, and how specifically that is comorbid with the mother wound, but it's in a different way, so we need to separate the two of them. But when our mother is critical of us, it's very detrimental, because we come into the world and, this is our first bond, it's our first relationship, it's the first person that we really want to make proud of us, to love us, to please, so to speak. And you'll see that that's why we eventually get into these fawning and people-pleasing behaviors, and it's because of this failure. It's not really our failure, but it's an adaptive failure with the parent to be able to please them and to experience that approval and that affirmation from a very, very important relationship, probably the most important one ever. We also go into, they don't respond with empathy at all to any of our child's emotions. Okay, so in particular, I want to talk about that whole physical need thing. My mother was a nurse, and so if I cut my freaking toe off or something, she would leap right into action and she would give me medical care. And, that was her instinctual thing, and she would, take care of the wound. But when it came to emotions, any kind of emotional need, it was a brick wall. There was no comfort when I cried. There was just no emotional component to that. Okay, I'd come home crying with a boo-boo, and she would fix the boo-boo physically, but there was no emotional affection or nurturing or comfort there. Okay, so there's a big difference there. We get into where a lot of times the child becomes basically the backbone. This is beyond parentification. It's where you end up being the one that is expected to cater to your mother's emotional and physical needs. And this can go to a lot of extremes. In my case, it went to a lot of extremes. It wasn't just me being her emotional surrogate for her to vent to yell at, to beat up on, to take things out on. But I was also, later on as I got older, put into, unfortunately, a sexual role. So these things can go to some serious extremes and really, really affect us in a very holistic way. And that's why we have to realize that our healing has to be done layered and holistically as well. When you add in the fact that they are addicted to a substance like my parent was, whether it be drugs or alcohol, now this is how we foster that disorganized attachment, because we literally really don't know what we're going to get on a daily basis. And so this is tremendously confusing for a developing child. Their brain is trying to grow, everything is trying to develop and become the human being, the adult that you're going to be. And so we are left very, very disorganized, in a state of disarray, and unfortunately we carry that into adulthood, and we have to get to a point where we choose to heal, and that we have to do it by layers. There's no magic bullet here. I know that there's a lot of people out there that say that there's a magic bullet, but I promise you there's not. It's the whole reason I developed my program, my protocol, was because we need to pinpoint where the major areas of crisis are first and heal in layers. And it's going to take time. But if you don't do it that way, if you don't heal in layers, you're not going to heal. That's just the way that it is. And anybody who tells you otherwise is lying. And all you have to do is look at the data. And you see that cumulatively, the treatment models for PTSD, CPTSD, and operator syndrome are about a total of 35% efficacy. Okay, so I'm sorry if you're a mental health professional and you're listening to this. I don't care if I'm pissing you off, because it's the truth, and that's all there is to it. Okay, and trust me, I got failed by the system for over 20 years by numerous professionals, and so I know damn well what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm very passionate about that, as you can see, and that's why I'm here coming to you in a very passionate way, because I know what it takes to heal. And we have to start with things like this mother wound, and we have to realize that it's in layers, and we have to heal in layers, okay? They're unavailable to us as a child, and I mean unavailable in every possible way. You are ignored, you are set aside, you have no one to talk about your concerns, you have no one to express your anxieties and your fears and your doubts to, whether it be having nightmares. I mean, it doesn't matter. I had horrible night terrors as a child, and I had to learn how to self-comfort. And sometimes people will catch me still doing that. I will rock, or sometimes at night I will hold myself like a vampire in the bed. These are self-comfort measures that I learned as a child that have never gone away. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have to learn how to self-comfort if that's what we need to be able to regulate our nervous system and to calm down and to do what we need to do. Then that's very important that we do that. Also, when we, this is pretty much a generational curse. We have to call it what it is. If your parent did these things to you, then they have their own unresolved trauma. Things have happened to them, and they have been conditioned to be the person that they are. When we start looking at this in a less personal way, and we realize that our parents didn't just decide, hey, I'm going to torture my child. It hadn't, they are loving us and caring for us the very best that they know how, because of how they were taught. And so this is another reason why we have to make a decision to break this curse and to heal, so that we do not continue to produce offspring that go into the world and hurt other people. We are not going to be perfect, but if we can improve upon what our parents did, if we can work really hard to not do the things that our parent did, then we can start to break that curse, and our offspring goes into the world and they're healthier and they produce healthier, and we start going in an upward trend instead of a downward trend where this chain of abuse or this family curse just continues on for eternity. Somebody has to make the decision to stop that, and I am grateful to God that I had him, that I bathed and bathed and bathed in prayer over fatherhood. And I made mistakes. Of course I've made mistakes, but I do know in my heart, as I look at my kids, one is grown and the other two are almost grown, and they're not perfect either, but I absolutely don't see a lot of the things in them that I see in myself. And so that is a positive, and I have to look at that as a positive, that I know that they are positive extensions of me, and that they are better human beings, and they're going to be stronger and better parents. And that's a success. We can't discount those positives or hyper concentrate on the negatives and browbeat and beat ourselves to death for the rest of our lives. We have to take our victories and make those victories and grab a hold of those and let that foster our healing as well. And we have to continue to be better adults, continue to be better people. We don't stop being a parent just because they're grown. We can continue to be healthier and to show up for them in their adult lives as a better and healthier person, especially when it comes to them when they start raising their own kids. We'll actually be able to give them some really good input as a healthier person. So it's important. So, some quick signs, you probably already know what they are, but some quick signs to really realize if you're, having or experiencing a mother wound. One of the things is that maybe you feel like your mom didn't really love you, or that she loved your siblings more. Okay, that's an issue with multiple children. I've seen that. Everybody, Kevin Lehman writes a book that's wonderful about the family order and who you are in that family. And, we have the scapegoat and the peacemaker and all these roles. And, oftentimes the peacemaker is the one that's kind of in the middle, that becomes that surrogate for the mother, and we see a lot of damage there as they go into the world, and they have a lot of trouble with their relationships. There's a lot of guilt and shame, and the inner critic beating them up about them being unworthy of love or affection and stuff. So it's very, very complex. That's why we call it complex post-traumatic stress disorder, because there's a lot of layers to this. Okay. It feels like your mom only loves you when you say or do the right thing. Some of you might know what the right thing is. Some of us, like myself, unfortunately, we never knew what the right thing was. You may get a different reaction every single day, every moment, depending on the mood or depending on how much they had drank that day. So you need to keep that in mind. Or maybe you never feel like your mom approves of you or accepts you for who you are. And you need to understand this carries right on into adulthood. You can be 40, 50, even 60 years old, and if your parent is in their 80s or 90s and still alive, trust me, I have an 80-year-old father, and I've had to create some healthy boundaries with him. My mother passed, so those boundaries are not there, and I don't have to worry about that, but I'm just saying they can still affect us as an adult that's out here in the world. We're taking care of ourselves, we're supporting our own families, and all intensive purposes, we are doing what we're supposed to do, and our parents can still be hypercritical. They can still cause us anxiety. They can still derail our relationships, make us doubt ourselves, and we can experience immense shame and guilt. And we have to get to a point in our healing journey where we say enough is enough. I'm going to do the biblical thing, and I'm going to honor my mother as I should, as God tells me to. But enough is enough. I'm an adult. I'm out in the world. I have my own family, my own brain, my own life, and I am responsible and accountable for my own decisions, and I have to take ownership of that. And part of doing that is we have to cut that umbilical cord with our parent, and we cannot allow that shame and guilt and dysfunction to be part of our lives anymore. And I know it's not easy, because God knows it's taken me years to be able to do that. And I may not be 100% there even, but I'm a whole lot better than I was, and I don't let that stuff pour into me and then allow it to pour into my family or into my relationships, and that's really important that we have to get to that point. So, what kind of things does this mother wound influence in you? Well, you're going to have low self-esteem. You're going to have difficulties understanding and managing your emotions. You're going to feel this need to be perfect or be perfectionistic. You're going to be a workhorse, okay? You're going to work really hard, and you're going to be driven, and your self-critic is going to be after you worse than any other human being, okay? This is part of the deal. Relationship problems are huge with this, including patterns of codependency and also self-sabotage. So this is when we see these anxious, avoidant, and disorganized attachment strategies that we've talked about. This is a huge part of it, is that mother wound. Like I said, we have that negative inner critic that just is after us all the time. And then we can also have a deep-rooted fear of becoming like your mother. And I definitely went through that. When we conceived our first child, I was buried in books and buried in self-help stuff, and I was just so hyper-focused on trying to not be a toxic parent like mine were, okay? And there is a tremendous fear. I've even known clients that have never had children because of that fear. They have had such a fear of becoming like their parent that they just decided to not have kids, and that really is a tragedy, because God created us to procreate and to raise our children and to experience not just the moments, the bad moments, but the joy of being a parent and loving something so much like we do our children, and understanding sacrifice and all of those things. God created us to do that. Honestly, it's a way to understand Him and His love is by experiencing being a parent, because He literally is the parent to all of us, and so it really can draw us closer to Him. So it's a sad thing when we see people not have children, because that fear has overcome them so much that they've made a decision in their life that the only way I can break this family curse is to just not even have children. And that happens a lot more than we think. So before we close the video out, I want to go over some differences here, because I want you to understand that the mother wound is very much the same for women and men, or daughters or sons, but I want you to understand some key differences on how it affects a son versus a daughter. When we come, and another thing I need you to understand before we go into this real quick is that anyone can be this motherly role. It doesn't have to be your mother. Any matriarch or patriarchal figure that fills the role of motherhood. And so when my mother passed away when I was 9 years old and I came to live with my father, I not only got a father wound from him, but I also got the reinforcement of a mother wound, because as a 9-year-old child, I still needed those things, the nurturing and the love and the affection and all of those things. I still was seeking that. And so my father, being a single parent, unfortunately was in that role where he had to provide motherly and fatherly things for me. And so it was kind of, a double whammy for me, because not only did the mother wound continue to get reinforced, but then I also had the father wound on top of that. So I want you to understand that this mother wound isn't just exclusive to your mother. If you live with your grandmother or an aunt or a female caregiver, whoever's in that role, or even a single father, this can reinforce that mother wound, okay? And we need to understand that. So men with an unprocessed mother wound may long for a woman's love and approval, okay? This is how we show up in relationships. And a lot of times, it's persistent with an anxious attachment style from childhood, because, we might be clingy, we might be afraid of abandonment, we might constantly be looking for reasons, whether it be a text message that wasn't returned or a telephone call that wasn't returned. We're very, very anxious in that relationship with females. And a lot of times this can sabotage a relationship, because women, whether they want to admit it or not, they really need that man to come into the relationship and be a leader and be strong. And they don't want to be our motherly role. They don't want to be the one that constantly has to fulfill that need. And so we need to understand that romance and intimacy with your wife or girlfriend or significant other is definitely not the same thing as them coming into a role and being your mother. So there's a difference there. The reason these clingy behaviors happen is because it's a means of compensation for a lack of love someone felt from their mother. And so it's almost like you're trying to make up for lost time also, and you have to be careful. These wounds don't always lead to just anxious attachment. In some instances, the mother wound, can lead to avoidant behaviors and disorganized behaviors. And we need to understand that because we didn't get that ability to get in touch with our emotions and get emotional maturity. And so a lot of times, we will shut down our difficult feelings. And this causes us to feel out of reach and distant in relationships to the other person. And it's because we just don't know how to deal with it. So this is kind of how you show up, and aside from the insecure attachment, men who experience the mother wound may also struggle with feelings of inadequacy and sadness, which, then manifests into anger. We've talked about that. That's our go-to emotion. We're actually sad or feeling insecure, and we turn that into anger, which is really masking the real emotions that we're having there. And the thing that's weird is that this anger can manifest itself in very random ways, and unconnected scenarios, such as a traffic jam or at work. Sometimes we just snap, and it's not even about the situation that we're in. It's about that insecurity and that sadness inside of us, and we just manifest anger. Okay, so we as men, we need to be conscious of that, and I was famous for that. I did a lot of that. I'm feeling inadequate or insecure, and next thing I know, my hand is going through the wall. I did that as a young man, and it was very unhealthy. And thank God I've gotten to the point of healing where I don't do these stupid things anymore. Okay. Let's talk about mother wounds and daughters and how there's a little bit different there. With daughters, it tends to develop into this intense sense of shame. They feel that there's something wrong with them, or that they need to remain small to be loved. It may also manifest as a continual feeling of guilt, that they should have more or achieve more. So their career's not good enough, their house isn't big enough, nothing is good enough. They're constantly trying to raise the bar for themselves in order to get this approval from their mother, which unfortunately most of the time they're never going to get, no matter what they do. And so it's really, really difficult. This low self-esteem associated with an unresolved mother wound can also manifest as a woman comparing herself to other people, specifically other females. For example, they may compare themselves to females that they deem more successful, more beautiful, wealthy. Maybe they have a better body, they're more attractive. They're constantly measuring themselves up to other people without even knowing them. It's this facade that's in their brain, that there's this target that they need to achieve, and it's somebody else. And it's very unhealthy because they don't see their own value, and they don't see the beauty that lives within them, and the amazing person that they are. I've known people like this that it frustrated me because I saw the most wonderful and amazing person in the world, and they just could not get past these self-critical behaviors where they weren't thin enough, they weren't successful enough, they weren't smart enough, they didn't make enough money, they weren't successful enough, and it's really, really sad because it doesn't just hurt that person. They don't just continue to destroy themselves, but they also destroy the people around them that love them, because when you really love someone and they're tearing themselves down, if you love them, it affects you, because the image you have of them is constantly being challenged. So it can be very difficult in those relationships. Experts in the field of attachment specifically suggest that the belief that their mothers see them as not good enough, it puts daughters in a double bind. Okay, they not only internalize the belief that they're not good enough, but as a result, they become, a self-fulfilling prophecy, and they limit their own selves. They limit their own positive behaviors, and their own beliefs about themselves and their potential. So the self-fulfilling prophecy is that they end up limiting themselves, because they feel so condemned and feel such disapproval from their mother figure. So they're not able to see their potential. And I also have known people like this, and it's painful to see it, because you see this individual that is just an angel, a shining star. God broke the mold when they made this individual, and they just can't get past that mother wound to understand how amazing they are and how wonderful they are, and what a gift, an absolute gift to the world they are. And so it's very, very sad, and this is why we need to get past this mother wound, because these women that are going through this have a tremendous amount to offer to the world with their experiences. They can help heal many other women that are dealing with those feelings from the mother wound, and the ripple effect is we just can't even imagine the ripple effect of that pebble going into the water, and the generations that can be affected by us when we decide to heal. We can help the generation after us, and then they can continue to help others, and we can start turning this curse, this product of sin and abuse and trauma, we can start turning it into something amazing. And in my opinion and my theory, we are literally creating a better world. And for me, it means even more, because if I can use anything that I've been through not only to help heal people, but also to show them the love of my Father in heaven. There's no greater gift whatsoever. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you got some information out of it. I hope that you got a message that shows you that we can absolutely break free from the mother wound. We can absolutely experience healing. And not only that, but the greatest gift is that when we start to turn around our lives, we can pour into the next generation and generations after that by helping them understand how to get out of this prison that we're in from the mother wound. Next video, when we come back, we're going to dedicate strictly to recovery behaviors. I really encourage you to tune into that one, because we're going to talk about what it takes to heal and how that looks, the layers, the different ways that we can progressively get better and start getting past this mother wound. And not only that, but showing up as a father or a mother for our kids in a healthier way and in relationships a better way. And last but not least, of course, hopefully get you closer to God as well, which is my absolute redemption and my absolute forgiveness in my life and my hope. Until next time, God bless all of you. Thank you so much for your support, and be good and take care.